Thank you, Phil. My name is Matt. I'm a recovered alcoholic. It's an honor to be invited anywhere. It's a real honor to be invited back. It wasn't too long ago that neither of those things happened too often. And so, yeah, my sobriety date is May 19th, 2016. Right. So if anybody's keeping track of on Friday, I'll have 7 years, which is pretty cool. My home group is the Bronx Big Book Study. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor. I sponsor guys who sponsor guys. And I try to stay active in Alcoholics Anonymous as best I can. Because this is the coolest thing on the planet. This really is like the coolest place on planet Earth. There is, you know, when I first was trying to get sober, my son's mom came home one day as I was cooking dinner, and I was rushing through dinner. And she's like, "Why are you rushing?" I said, "Listen, I got to get to the meeting. They told me I got to do 90 meetings in 90 days. I got to get to this meeting at 7 o'clock. And she stops and she takes a pause. She puts her bag down from work and she says, "So you mean to tell me that you need to go to a church basement full of former drinkers, full of drunks, to know how to live your life?" And I was like, "I guess I do." And I'll tell you something, that having a church basement full of drunks to go to has saved my life on more occasions than I care to count. And so I have been tasked with speaking on steps 10 and 11, and I, for the life of me, haven't the slightest idea what's going to come out of my mouth. I don't come prepared for these things, right? My girlfriend is down in Florida taking care of her grandma who's sick. We really think she's playing it up because she doesn't want to go to her daughter's wedding next week, but that's neither here nor there. So she's down there, and she messaged me and she said, "Have a good meeting." I said, "I love you. I'm gonna go spit some bars for God." If you guys don't know what the phrase "spit some bars" means, it's a slang term for rapping, for rap music. When you're rapping, it's called spitting some bars. And that's what I try to do. I try to be the conduit for God. I try to be a vessel, right? Alice says all the time, she says, I'm not the milkshake, but I get to be the straw. And so it is my hope that I say something that delivers some spiritual milkshake into the room as I go through this deal. I understand that this is not a big book study, but my big book is open, and there's a good chance I'm going to read from it. And there's nothing you could do about it because you asked me to speak, and that's how I feel like speaking tonight. So steps 10 and 11, I think it's really important. Maybe there's some people in the room who haven't made it to step 10 or 11 yet. And so maybe I should put it into a little bit of context. I think that's fair. And so how do I arrive at step 10? Right? By the time I get to step 10, the book tells me that we've entered the world of the spirit. Now, what the heck is that? Right? And I'll tell you that I did not feel like I was entering the world of the spirit the first time I walked into a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous with mismatched shoes and a dirty t-shirt. And I said, "My life is in shambles. I need your help." Right? And I did that multiple times for multiple years until I was struck sober. I love when people introduce themselves and they talk about their sobriety date and they say, "I was separated from alcohol." Because I didn't make a decision to get sober. I didn't come here and say one day that I was going to dig my heels in and I was going to do this deal. Every time I did that, I found myself drunk again. I was the product of some measure of grace that I'm pretty sure I don't deserve, and I don't even understand why I got it, but I'm grateful I do. And so I'm going to do as much work as I can in Alcoholics Anonymous to try and pay God back for the life that I have today. And I came here in 2012, left. I came back in 2015, was in and out for a year. And then in 2016, I spent 4 months running my life to the ground because I hadn't the slightest idea what it meant to be an alcoholic. I would get 90 days and I would follow your directions. I do everything that you told me, everything that you told me. I go to 90 meetings in 90 days. I would just not drink and I would go to meetings. I would get a sponsor. I would get a home group. I'd get a commitment in that home group. I'd go for fellowship. I'd hang out after the meeting. I'd get there early. I'd put away chairs. All of that stuff that you told me to do, I'd make coffee. I'd reach out to the newcomer. And then I would drink. And to say that from the podium might give somebody the impression that I'm saying that those suggestions that we're given when we come here aren't enough. Well, the truth of the matter is they're not. They're a great place to start. But what I need to do when I get here is I need to dig my heels into the step work. I need to align myself with somebody who's armed with the facts about themselves, who can take me through this so I can have an experience with God. And the byproduct of that experience with God is that I want to drink. I don't think about drinking and I don't think about not drinking. And I went away to treatment in May of 2016. And man, my ego is a persistent son of a gun. I'll tell you, because for a week or almost a week, I was really proud that I was the undefeated chess champion of the rehabilitation center. I had been around AA for a couple of years, so I was telling people how to run their program. I was like, no, AA doesn't work like that. You should probably do this. Not realizing that I'm sitting next to them, counting the same amount of days as them, right? And something happened. Something happened. Everything that has happened to me that has inspired any kind of change in me has come from God touching the part of himself inside of me. Right? The morning I decided that I was going to leave for treatment, I was home alone with my 6-year-old son. Right? And I had been up for 4 days partying and drinking and who knows what. And I couldn't get up to get him ready for school. It was the first time ever. No matter how bad it got, I always got that boy ready for school, clean, pressed, breakfast, homework, and I just couldn't. The courage to do battle wasn't there. And the thought came to me that if I didn't get up and do something about it, I was going to leave that boy with the same fate I had when I was his age. When I was his age, when I was exactly 6 years old, my dad was murdered a few blocks from my home. He was a drug addict, and he'd gone away to treatment, and he came back from treatment, but his debts were still there when he got there, and somebody came to collect. And I spent the bulk of my life being a victim of my father's death. Right? You'd behave like me, you'd be a brat like me, you'd drink like me, you'd be confused and misunderstood like me if you were the kid whose dad got murdered. Let alone when he died, he left me alone in a house with 9 women, right? It was being raised in a Puerto Rican coven. And so I didn't know which way was up. I didn't know what was going on. And so I went away to treatment. I do my week of like trying to wrestle my own ego until after one speaker meeting, I went upstairs, and for the first time in the however many days I was there, I hit my knees and I prayed. Before that, I was too embarrassed to hit my knees and pray because I thought I'd look corny to my roommate. I was embarrassed. And I hit my knees and I prayed, and for the first time, I said the most sincere prayer that any alcoholic says ever, and it was, God help, I don't know what to do. And I got up and I went and I called my sponsor and I said, we're going to go through these steps when I get back. And he said, okay. So I'm going to read this big book cover to cover before I get out. And I didn't make it all the way cover to cover, but I made it most of the way through the stories because I got released a little bit early for good behavior. And so we got back and we started on the step work, and I started to learn what it meant to be an alcoholic. I really used to think that step 1 meant I can't drink. Step 1 means I'm going to drink. I'm going to drink, provided that I can't get a spiritual experience between me and the next drink. And the reason that I'm going to drink is because I'm an alcoholic, and that's what alcoholics do, and I have a choice in the matter. When I start drinking, I can't stop. Everything I've ever been promised, every dream I've ever had is waiting for me in the drink to come, but it's never, ever there when the drink arrives. And every time I tell myself that I fell for that sweet little lie yet again, and I wake up covered in guilt, shame, remorse, and the like, and hating myself and hating for how much I'm disappointing people and hurting people, and I tell myself I can't do this anymore, and that little window of authenticity that comes from a bad run, about 5 o'clock, usually, maybe sooner, my mind has manufactured a reason for me to go take a drink, and I believe it, and I'm off to the races yet again. It is the obsession of alcoholism. And I tell myself that I'm going to drink like a gentleman, or it was the brown liquor. It's because I was in Tennessee drinking with Phil, and those Tennessee boys, man, they don't know how to act. But whatever I tell myself, right? And then I have to realize that my life is unmanageable. And I thought my life was manageable because I had external things that looked okay. I had a job and a car, and I was a single dad to a son, and I had an apartment, and I was in decent shape, and all of this other stuff. But the truth of the matter is that the unmanageability of my life has nothing to do with anything external. The unmanageability of my life is the unmanageability of my spirit. It's my insides. It's my chronic dissatisfaction with life. It's my uncontrollable emotional nature. It's my sinking into depression and rising into mania. It's my like me making myself a victim of things, living in this place of selfish and self-centeredness. And it doesn't matter if it's by nature or by nurture. It's what I have. I'm here now. What am I going to do about it? Because everything that I've tried doesn't work. And so I have to arrive at the conclusion based on the evidence of that whole step one experience that I can't fix a problem, but something can. And what you guys were telling me is that something has to be something greater than me. And so I have to Tarantino my way backwards through the step and say, like, all right, well, let's start with the fact that maybe I am insane. Maybe I'm crazy. And then I have to believe that there is a power greater than me. I have to stomp my ego to dust. And I start with addition by subtraction. I remove myself as a possible solution to the problem, and I cling to the idea of being willing to believe. That's it. Maybe, just maybe, you guys are onto something, and I'm going to explore that. And I make the completely blind decision that God is everything. And then I surrender to that idea that God is everything. My life and my will. I say, God, I don't understand you at all. Right? Because in the beginning, it says in the step, God as we understand him. I don't understand anything about God. And the more I learn about God, the less I understand about God. But I surrender my life and my will, my thoughts, my actions. I get out of the driver's seat. I sit in the passenger seat where I belong, where I'm safe. I'm out of the management business. And God hires me for a job. I don't know exactly what God wants me to do all the time, but most of the time I know what he doesn't want me to do. And in the beginning, what he wants me to do is right. And he wants me to write an inventory so I can carve out the parts of me that I've been carrying around thinking that they serve me, these tools that I've been using for my entire life, wondering why life doesn't go so well. I'm angry and I'm scared. It really boils down to the fact that I'm angry and I'm scared. I've been living my life writing a script for everybody under the sun, and when they don't read the words the way I wrote them, I'm pissed. I assign myself a role in your life, and when you don't let me play it, I'm pissed. And I want to control outcomes. I want things to go my way. And when they don't, I'm scared. And when I realize I can't control outcomes, I'm scared. Things that I don't know or don't understand, I'm scared. Things that are big and could mean great things for me scare me because I never think that I'm prepared. I don't trust myself. Scared of, fear of failure because that means embarrassment, fear of success because that means more responsibility and the possible future failure. Like it's like I'm running circles around myself, this committee of a-holes that lives in my brain, speaking to me in my voice, telling me lies all the time. And I sit and I share that with another man, and I've returned to that process over and over and over again because I did my first fifth step in July of 2016, and I'm not going to be able to live the rest of my life on that spiritual experience. Right? And what happens is that they point out the patterns and they give me some of their own dirt, and we start to realize that we are one, that we're all just children of the same God trying to have an experience. Right? And the thing that we don't talk about enough, at least I don't hear about enough, let me keep it on me, is that when we do the fifth step, we're not just bringing it to our sponsor or whoever we're bringing it to. It's also an exercise where I invite God into it. And I bare my soul to God, and I offer up my truths to God, and I offer up my dirt to God. And then I go sit quietly and I meditate on that, and I ask if I'm really ready to have God remove these things, because we're not talking about booze anymore. We're talking about the parts of me that come in the way of my relationship with God and my relationship with you. The things that have me hurting myself and others, disappointing myself and others, failing at things that are lined up perfectly for me, chronically dissatisfied by life, wallowing in my own hot tub of self-pity. I can go on. I can list all 7 deadly sins, been guilty of all of them at one point or another. And the entire program hinges on my willingness to have God remove these things. Can he take all of them, root and branch, Bill says in the book. Right? There's this beautiful imagery that you find that shows itself as a thread throughout the book. And early in the book, the doctor says, if their foundations can be grounded in the power greater than themselves, they can recreate their lives. And so I do this fearless and moral inventory, and I get the rotten roots out, and I start to dig for some new soil, and I start to plant myself in the idea of God. And I say, God, take them. Good and bad, take all of them. That's all step 7 is. I say, God, take it. And I say that prayer because I don't know which one is which, and I don't know when he's going to use what he's going to use. Remember, I'm not in the management business anymore. I've proven time and time again that I suck at it. And I make a list of people I've harmed. Because if I'm in the space, see, something happens as I go through 6 and 7. At least that's been my experience multiple times. I think God just doesn't like strike me virtuous, right? What I am is I'm given opportunities to exercise the virtues that he's growing inside of me as they begin to blossom. Right? I'm given a moment of pause and I start to become aware, right? And my sponsor says that I want to do this work so deeply that I can see the character defect walking in the room, right? And if I'm in that space where I recognize that these are the things that require the most work, that I have no power anymore, I have no more power over these things than I had over my obsession to drink. That these are the things that are making my life unmanageable because I'm operating all of my relationships using these tools. Then I can go and start making repairs. Because I'm in a space where I'm letting God in and letting God remove these things. So I'm not going to make amends for things that I'm doomed to repeat. Because amends is not I'm sorry. Anybody say sorry when they were drinking? Right? We exhausted that card. It's repairing the damage. It's the difference between, hey man, I'm sorry I threw a baseball through your window versus, hey man, how much for the window? Right? That's what an amends is. And then we read those 9-step promises as we get, right? We will be amazed before we are halfway through. Halfway through what? The amends process. All of a sudden, this is the first time that I get to take my sobriety prime time. Everything else I've been doing behind closed doors. Maybe I talk about it in meetings and maybe I share it with my sponsors in my network, but this is the first time that I get to see if this thing really works. This is the first time I've been in the spiritual dojo of life. I'm going to a tournament. And what happens? I watch God miraculously repair things that I did my best to run into the ground my entire life. Instantaneous repair. And guess what? Sometimes it's not instantaneous repair, but it's an instantaneous sandbag against the oncoming onslaught of my own ego and alcoholism. Right? And I'll tell you something. Those amends that end beautifully that you could put in a Hallmark movie, those are nice. But the amends that are a punch in the gut, sometimes those are the deepest lessons. Those are also powerful experiences. Don't dismiss those as amends gone wrong. And we read these beautiful, sweet promises in the 9-step promises. And some of these things are really deep and profound, right? Like no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others, right? All those things. I tried 4th steps when I was coming in and out. And there were things I just held close to the chest. I said, there's no way that I'm going to tell anybody this. And I let those things go with my sponsor in that July 2016 5th step. And I was free from it. And then I had 3 different sponsees that when we sat down to do their 5th steps, I opened up and I shared that. And they pulled out their pen and they said, I wasn't going to tell you that. I did the same thing. Uniquely qualified to help each other, we are. And when we're done with these promises, we have arrived. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. Now, this is not my nightly review, ladies and gentlemen. This is how I live my life day to day. Bill describes step 10 as testing my thinking against the new God consciousness within. Am I going out into the world and behaving like a human being who has surrendered his will and his life to God? Am I going out in the world and behaving like a human being who is willing to have God remove his defects of character and prays for him to do that often? See, the thing is that the character defects don't just get scooped out, right? And all of a sudden I can put on like a monk's outfit and hang some beads from my waist and walk around all super holy. They're going to come back because what does it say? It says our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for a lifetime. I have to grow in understanding and effectiveness. What does that mean? My understanding of God, my understanding of his children, my understanding of my role in that relationship, my effectiveness in carrying this message, my effectiveness in relating my experience to the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, so that when I open my mouth, I offer something of value to someone. We continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, and every other character defect that came up on the list of character defects. And then when you do inventories over and over again, you start to learn you had character defects you didn't know you had. Right? By my third inventory, I learned that, boy, do I love to gossip. And I so wanted to blame it on the Puerto Rican coven that I grew up in, but I was 32 years old. It's time to stop blaming people for things that I chose to do up until my 30s. Right? You just continue to watch for self. And when these crop up, I have 4 things that I have to do. I'm giving 4 directions. When they crop up, we ask God to remove them. What does ask mean in the big book? It means I pray. Right? I used to have one of the sponsees, man, he was hard-headed. God bless him, he's passed on. But was he hard-headed? He was he was the nicest guy on the planet. And he said, Matt, I don't know what to do with my thoughts. Matt, I don't know what to do with my thoughts. They come up, they this, they that, they that. I said, listen, this is what I'm going to need you to do. I said, I'm going to need you to physically take your hand and pull the thought out of your head, put it inside of an imaginary balloon, tie the balloon knot, pull the string down, and let it go. And let it float up to God. And he says, Matt, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I said, okay, try it. And I show up to a meeting. At the end of the meeting, I didn't make the meeting. I was coming by to just hang out with the guys after I got off of work in the parking lot. And he's pacing back and forth in the corner, smoking a cigarette. And he's like this. All his resentments that he got from the people whose shares he didn't like in the meeting, he's giving them to God at the end of the meeting. But you know what he was doing? He was watching for the resentment when it popped up, and he was asking God to take it. Right? And that's what I'm supposed to do. Ask God, God, take this thing from me. What do we do next? We discuss them with someone immediately, which means I call Nikki and I tell Nikki that I'm completely certain that the guy who cut me off in traffic that morning woke up to ruin my day. Right? And then Nikki tells me to drive up a little bit closer, and I realize that it's this adorable little old man with Coke bottle glasses who has the slightest idea where he's going, and maybe I should show him some grace. Right? And make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Quickly. There are words in the big book that are really plain and clear. Quickly and promptly are very clear words, which means that I don't harm somebody and decide that I will promptly amend this when it's convenient. I don't promptly amend this when it might be comfortable. And the thing is, what's really cool about this process is, right, like the whole effort of this thing is ego death, right? Ego, I'm going to battle my ego for the rest of my life, right? There is nothing more powerful than the recuperative abilities of the alcoholic ego. Nothing. It will rebuild itself, and it will speak to me in different languages. And right, all of a sudden, if I turn my camera a little bit to the right, you're going to see that I have entirely too many sneakers. I'm hiding them from my girlfriend when they come in the house and seeing if she can find a different color box in the stack. It's a sickness. My ego will tell me things that are complete and total lies. Right? I'm going to be fighting my ego. But if I'm willing to step through the discomfort of an amends promptly, often, what happens, Cliff G says, is that over time, I stop being someone who needs to run around making amends all the time. Grow in understanding and effectiveness. Right? And here's the thing. I've had so many spiritual experiences at Target. I could do a whole hour on Target spiritual experiences. And for those of you who are outside the country, Target is just a really big department store with a red bullseye. And Target you don't know what you're going to buy in Target. They tell you when you get there. Because I go there for cat food and I leave with TVs and stuff. And so in the middle of the pandemic, I was running out of the house as often as I could, right? It was me, a puppy. My son was, I don't know, 9, 11. My stepdaughter was 5 or 6. And then my girlfriend was pregnant with the maniac we were talking about before the meeting, who's almost 3 now. And anytime I would listen, I'd die on my shield. Listen, guys, I'm going to go out and risk my life for this family. I'm going to put on a mask and I'm going to go to Target to get us our groceries. And I just needed to get out of the house. And so I load up my son and we go stand online to Target. And I live in the Bronx, but sometimes we wander up to Targets in the suburbs. And on the way out of Target, the security guard is checking the receipts. And for whatever reason, that rubbed me wrong, because in the Targets in the suburbs, they don't check the receipts. So it felt like it was discriminatory against people in the city, especially in a lower income neighborhood. And so I'm walking out of Target and he goes to take my receipt and I snatch the receipt back. And I say, you don't do that in the Target in Westchester. And I storm out of them. And my son looks up at me and says, Dad, why'd you do that? I said, I don't know, but I got to go say sorry. And so I turn around and I walk back into Target. And I approach the guy and I say, hey, man, the way I acted was completely and totally out of line. I shouldn't have done that to you. You're just trying to do your job, and I understand that. So any way I can repair this, I need you to let me know. He's the same man. Let me tell you something. It's the least favorite part of my job. The least favorite part of my job. He says, but I had a whole bunch of jobs to keep my family afloat. And when everything shut down, this is the only one that kept me on. I got let go from the other 2. So whatever they tell me to do, I do, because I really need this job. And so I'm sorry if that made you uncomfortable. I'm just taking direction. And for a moment, I look like a real asshole. But for a moment, I'm connected with another human being on a real human level. And I get to see him for who he is, and he gets to see me for who I am. And you know something? The maniac that I live with, the really cute mental patient that lives in the house, she's going to be 3 soon. And he still works at Target. And when I walk in the door with her every time, he says, hey, Summer Grace, great to see you. And I've made a friend who's chased me down on multiple occasions because I left something in the self-checkout that I paid for. Right. And so what happens is that I've entered the world of the spirit. And when I enter the world of the spirit, I start to realize that, like, this external shell thing that's filled sack of bones that we walk around in, this isn't me. I'm a creation of God, just like Carol's a creation of God, and Nikki's a creation of God, and Yuna's a creation of God. We're all God's kids just trying to have an experience, man. Like, I'm going to make mistakes. 30-something years of managing my own life, of running the show, of writing the script. It's going to take a little while for me to systematically surrender to God. Over and over and over again, trying time and time again to kill my ego. And then what happens? And I love the 9-step promises. We read them at meetings and they sound really, really nice. But if you would have read the 10-step promises afterwards, in the meetings before I heard the 9-step promises, I might have understood what I was really in for. And we had ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time, sanity will have returned. What does that mean? The insanity of alcoholism is the decision that I make stone cold sober to put a drink in my face. So right now it's saying that I'm not going to have the thought to put the drink in my face. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. What it told me before was that I was without defense against the defense against the first drink, right? That I was without the kind of defense that kept me from putting my hand on a hot stove. And all of a sudden it's like, boom, not going to do that. That's hot. We react sanely and normally when we find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. I didn't wrest freedom from alcohol out of the lives of the steps or the lives of my sponsor or even my relationship with God. It's all I'm listening to when I read these words are different descriptions of what God's grace looks like in my life. I'll tell you something. If my girlfriend hadn't gone down to go visit her grandmother this weekend. We had tickets to go up to the Angry Orchard Vineyard with a bunch of guys from our firehouse and their wives. And the first question that I got from the guys was like, "Hey man, you're really gonna come to a cider tasting?" I said, "She really wants to go. And I really want to be of service to her. And your stupid alcoholic apple juice doesn't bother me. I am free from it. Free. My girlfriend cooks with red wine when she makes spaghetti bolognese. And you know what happens? Neither of it, she's not an alcoholic, but it sits in the fridge until it becomes vinegar because nobody remembers that it's even there. That's what freedom from alcohol looks like. I'm not saying go buy some wine and put it in your fridge and make spaghetti bolognese. That's not what I'm saying. I'm giving you the scenario that's going on in my home. I can be free from this thing. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. When we got here, didn't people tell us don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle happens? I'm pretty sure that this is the miracle they were talking about. There is going to come a time when I've cultivated such a relationship with God that I get to co-create a life where I'm free from alcohol. The byproduct of the work that I do here and my relationship with God is that I don't think about drinking and I don't think about not drinking. I am free from this thing. And the thing is that I can stay free if I stay in the work. It is none of these gifts that I'm given, right? They are grace, but they're contingent upon some action on my part, right? I get placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. I didn't know. I wanted cash and prizes. I heard somebody in a meeting in rehab say, if you follow these steps, you can live a moderately happy life. And I was pissed. I said, what do you mean moderately happy life? I'm here for the highs. And I didn't understand that safe and protected neutrality was where it was at. Freedom from this deal is where I was at. I didn't understand that being useful is where it was at. I didn't understand how much noise was going on on here until it got quiet. I heard somebody in a meeting recently say that I was searching for happiness and I found it in usefulness because usefulness is the currency of happiness. When I'm not thinking about me, that's the ultimate freedom, right? We have not sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It doesn't say I removed the problem. It says the problem has been removed. God just takes this thing away. This is how I react if I stay in fit spiritual condition. And if I let up, right? And then there's another death threat. It's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle fault. My job is to spend the rest of my life pressing remember when Staples used to have that commercial with the easy button? Easy button, Staples, easy, right? I have a thy will be done button. Every time I'm trying to get in my own head and thinking that I got the right, thy will be done. Thy will be done. I'm going to make those and offer them out at conferences for free or something, right? Because like I need constant reminders of like Father Martin says that humility is understanding my place in the order of things. And I need a constant reminder because something happens. I wake up in the morning every morning and forget that I work for God now. I wake up in the morning with this amnesia of like, you know what, maybe like if I don't pray and meditate, if I don't get into this thing first thing in the morning, right? Like big book thumpers like get the and I'm one of them, right? That's not a shot. I'm a proud, like if there was a t-shirt, I'd wear it. And like the big book thumpers get all this deal about like staying in the book and following it to the letter and being big book fundamentalists and reading it word for word. You know what the problem is that if I don't follow the structure of this program exactly as it's laid out, rigorously, I unravel really quickly. That's why I'm so serious about this, right? And so now I'm in the world of the spirit. What is my responsibility? Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. And when I got here, they told me you didn't have to be on step 11 to practice step 11, which really just meant that I don't have to wait until I get to step 11 to pray and meditate. But it's something different after I've had an experience of the first 10 steps. You see, when they start talking about it in the book, they start talking about it from the night before. Because what's going to happen? God is putting like filter after filter after filter so that I have ample opportunity to get right with him. right? Because I'm going to go through my day watching for the things that are going to come up. And when they come up, I do all of those things that they told me to do. But when I get to the end of the night, I might have missed something, might have fallen through the cracks. Right. And that nightly meditation, the nightly review, right? I'm a yoga teacher. I'm a Puerto Rican kid from the South Bronx. I'm a gangbanger. I have tattoos. I sold guns and drugs in the street. And God has a funny sense of humor because 3 years into sobriety, he got me into yoga teacher training. And now I wear Aladdin pants and I light candles and I chant Om. And I sit with my legs all folded up and I meditate for very long periods of time. But that's not what they're talking about in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. The nightly review is a meditation, right? One of my yoga mentors said the simplest way to define meditation is contemplating the divine. And so what I'm doing is I'm reviewing my day to see what parts of self resurfaced and have been harder to catch with that step 10 experience throughout the day. Was I resentful? There's one question that you always have an answer for in that nightly review, and it's what could I have done better? Because I'm never going to end my day with a perfect day in God's eyes. What could I have done better? Right. And it's not to beat me up to see where I fell short. It's just information. It's just information. Right. Like I am on this ongoing house cleaning, this ongoing effort of less Matt, more God. And so what I have to do is I have to still dig for the Matt that remains, the self that remains. And when I'm done with my nightly review, which is supposed to be constructive, the reason it's constructive, right? If I buy a brand new home and I walk into the house and I realize, when we took down this wall, we started to realize there was some rot in the studs, and we saw that there was some flooding in the basement and this, that. I own the home, it's my home. Am I gonna sit there and lament the fact that, there's more damage than I thought it was? Or am I just gonna get to work ripping those studs out and putting new ones in, drying up the basement so that I can lay down some new foundation that isn't so soaked through with water, right? What am I gonna do? All I have to do is take action. And so I sit there and all it is an inventory of the action that I'm going to take the next day as I get right with God. And when I'm done with it, I say, I asked for forgiveness. We ask for forgiveness. I pray for forgiveness. We don't talk about that enough. And you know what my forgiveness prayer looks like at the end of my nightly review? I say, God, I tried to do your job again today and I suck at it. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to not do that tomorrow. Because that's all it is playing God. If I'm disagreeing with reality and that makes me angry, playing God. If I'm trying to control outcomes, I'm playing God. If I'm trying to run your life and mine, I'm playing God. That's the ultimate sin of the deal. And then I wake up in the morning and upon awakening, I don't know about you, but that sounds like it means like when I wake up. Right? Not like after I walk the dog and make some coffee and check Facebook and send a couple emails. I want God in the emails. I want God with me when I walk my dog. I want God with me in the coffee. I should go to God first. And I'm not saying that I do this thing perfectly because Lord knows I don't. I'm a firefighter. Sometimes I get woken up because grandma burned the rice at 5 o'clock in the morning, and that's my upon awakening. Sometimes I get woken up, bopped in the head by this really cute little girl who says, Daddy, leche. Right? Like sometimes that's my upon awakening. But I get right with God in the morning as early as I can upon awakening. We look at the 24 hours of plan. And I'm looking at the 24 hours ahead, not because it's like, all right, God, listen, this is what I got for today. God, I got to do laundry. I got to get to the Social Security office. I got to get the dog to the groomer, right? Summer needs her physical for pre-K. And then I got to get a workout in. That's not what God's talking about when I say consider my plans for the day. Where can I be useful? I am not to fit God around my day. I'm supposed to fit my day around God. I consider my plans for the day and I look forward to where I can be of service to God. And the thing is that I ask, and then I sit and I listen. That contemplation of what the day is going to look like. I can start to trust my thinking. If I practice this long enough, I start to realize that the thoughts that come from Matt's self, from the thinking brain, are charged with energy, and the thoughts that come from God are calm, peaceful. And I'll tell you 2 step 11 stories because I'm running out of time here. One of them was in my firehouse, we have a room downstairs for guests, right? When guys come to work for us, run another firehouse, it's quiet, it's dark, there's no windows in the basement. It's my favorite place to go meditate in the morning. And I'm down there meditating. I was actually getting off, but I wanted to meditate before I went home, and the noise of the kids and the this and the that. And I'm like, and I'm sitting there and I said, like, God, I would just love I've been working a bunch and I tell God my plans, right? Which is what I just told you that you're not supposed to do. Right. And I'm like, God, I really would just like to spend the day with Summer at the park. It was like a 70-degree April day. It was just gorgeous. And so I just want to take her to the park and run around the park with her today. I get out of my meditation and the phone rings and it's my sponsee's mom. And it says, he's been lying to you. She's been drinking for 3 weeks. He's on my couch. There's vomit everywhere and I don't know what to do. I don't want to kick him out on the street. And I was like, I gotta pick up my daughter. I said, you know what? I'll figure it out. And I called my sponsor and I said, George, I need your help. I gotta go on this 12-step call, but I have Summer with me. And he said, all right, let's go. And that's the answer, usually, is all right, let's go. And we get in the car and we go there and you can hear him shouting at his mom, all this stuff. Like, why are you going through my phone? And I felt like shouting through the window, like, why are you 53 years old vomiting on your mother's couch? But that, right, like, I opened the door and he screamed. And my daughter knows him because he was sober for a time. And for a little while, he was dog sitting for us and he'd come over the house to get used to the dog. And I opened the door and I've got my daughter in my arms. And he looks at my daughter in the face. And the wind comes out of his chest and his shoulders drop. He walks into his room and he empties the bottles out of his book bag. He packs some clothes in his book bag and says, all right, take me to church. I call my mom who works at a rehab. She's retired, but she picks up shifts at this rehab. And I said, do you have a bed for him? She said, bring him right over. We got a bed for him. 1:30 in the afternoon, he was in a bed. 1:45, I was running around the park with my dog. I am to sit and look for direction. That's what I'm looking for. If I work for somebody, I got to report for duty. And I work for God. It's the agreement that I made in step 3. This is how I put it into action. Okay, God, right? Like, you're my employer. What do you need from me today? Right? And my prayers are really simple by the time I get to this point. It's God, what's my assignment? And can you give me the tools? What's my assignment? Can you give me the tools? Right. I'm going to finish with this story because I'm coming up on time. When my daughter was born, I was driving a 2012 Nissan Versa hatchback. Now, remember I told you it's 5 of us. We have a Hispanic Brady Bunch here. Me and my son, her and her daughter, and then we created the Maniac. And we didn't fit in the car, right? Because we love our daughter and because she's a daughter. And so I got the biggest, most padded possible car seat. The thing looks like she could go to NASA in this thing, in the back of a 2012 tiny little hatchback. And so my son's sitting in the middle like this and my stepdaughter's on the other side like this. And nobody fits in this car. And I still haven't fixed my credit enough to get a car loan from when I was drinking, right? Because my MO was pour the booze and toss the envelope in the back of the house and I'll figure it out later. And so I'm going to all these different car dealerships and I'm getting ready to sell my soul to the devil for like a 2018 Ford Escape or something like that. And they're offering me these ridiculous prices and I don't know what to do. And I'm speaking to Pat T, who's not my sponsor. And I said, Pat, I don't know what to do. He says, why don't you take it into 2-way prayer, which is a practice I was familiar of taking specific questions into prayer with God. and then sitting and meditating on the thoughts that come from it and see if there's any divine stuff that you can filter through. Write all that stuff down. So I take it into two-way prayer. I'm a guest in another firehouse in a very quiet corner where nobody knows what I'm doing. And so I sit down and I get my pen and my paper out and I write down on the paper, God, what should I do about this situation? I'm having a crisis of my own masculinity. I feel like I can't provide for my family. And I shut my eyes and I sit for the meditation, and the words that come to my mind are stop looking. And that was it. There was nothing after that, not a word, not a sound, but like faint white noise. I'm sure there are some of us old enough to remember when the TV went out, what white noise sounds like. And I walk downstairs, and there's this guy that works at that firehouse. He's an African Christian man, nicest guy on the planet. And he's always asking me about my life and my family, my this. And I walk out from the stairs, and he was downstairs cleaning, and he looks at me, and the first words out of his mouth, he says, "Yeah, man, I was wondering, what are you going to do about that little car now that your family's so big?" And I look up at the sky, and I'm like, that was fast. He says, "I drive Jeep. I've driven a Jeep my whole life." He says, "Why don't you look into a Jeep?" Jeep wasn't even on my radar. I go sit down, I have a cup of coffee. I go to this app that delivers the cars to your house. I put in an application and I get approved for a Jeep that's within my budget. Now it was a question of insurance. And as I'm going through it, I realized that I thought I'd never made an amends to Geico for money that I owed them, but I did. And at the time, I was not a firefighter. And so I go online, and because it's a government employees insurance company, they give breaks for people who work for the government. And so I got a deal on insurance that I could afford. So they tell me to put together all this paperwork and fax it over to the headquarters in Arizona. And if I can get it done by 8 o'clock tonight, that I have my car by Tuesday. And so I scramble. I go to the bank. I go here. I go there. I send all my paperwork, and I get it set in. And it's like 7 something, and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And I'm listening to Fleetwood Mac, and your wait time is this and your wait time is that, and it's creeping right up on the hour. And I'm terrified that because then the wait was like weeks if I didn't get it by Tuesday. And finally, like minutes to the hour, somebody picks up the phone and he's like, "Hey, Mr. Tizol, I wanted you to know that all your paperwork's in order. Your car is going to be delivered to." And I start crying like a baby. I said, "Hey, man, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I'm 4.5 years sober. This is the first time I got a car in my name. My family just grew, and I was having this crisis of faith. Like I didn't know why I couldn't provide for my family and just have like a safe car to drive my kids around somewhere and do family things. And I didn't know what I was doing." He stops me in the middle of it. He says, "Hey, man, I get it. I just celebrated 10 years. In Arizona. The one customer service agent I can get at a company that probably has 100 of them. I can't manufacture something that good on my best day. I just can't. The task that I'm given is to carve out the parts of me that separate me from God and separate me from you. And when I ask for direction and I ask for the tools will be provided, and the direction will most likely be you. I've come to learn and to understand time and time again that I am God's hands and feet on planet. That every time I turn around and I ask God, how can I serve you better? How can I love better? How can I be better? He's swinging me around, and he sends me to another soul just like mine who could use my help. And I'm placed in a position to be of service and be useful. And I'll tell you that when I came here, I didn't come here to be useful. And now that I am, it is the greatest gift that I've ever been given. Is to be useful to other human beings in the children of God. I want to thank you guys for allowing me to speak at your meeting tonight.